Buenos días, buenas noches, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Paula Rojas y hoy les voy a estar dando una guía de inglés en el tema de Present Perfect plus Ever. Y esto es para el noveno año, noveno grado de colegio, basado en la malla curricular del MEP. Entonces, empecemos. Present Perfect Tense. ¿Qué es esto? The present perfect tense is used when we want to describe an action or an experience that has happened in the past but continues to happen in the present or has some effect in the present. ¿Esto qué significa? Esto es algo que, una acción, algo que empezó en el pasado, pero todavía está pasando en el presente o ya terminó, pero afecta directamente en el presente. Let's see some examples. We have, I have watched that TV show. It has rained all weekend. You have said that before. And she has left the party. In this last one, we can see, for example, she has left the party. She already left the party. She left it in the past. So in the present, it's affecting it because she's not in the party right now because she left. Okay? So this tense we can use in certain different ways and we can make different types of sentences. So we're going to see the types and the formula that we have to use for each of them. First, we have affirmative. This is the most basic formula. And what we have to do is we have to take the subject first. Then we have the verb to have with the auxiliary form. That would be have or has, depending on the subject. And then lastly, we add the past participle of the verb. We have to remember the past participle of the verb is a type of verb. And what we do is that if we have a regular verb, we just add ed. And if we have an irregular verb, it depends on the verb. We can check a list, or maybe we know some of them already by memory. And so in this case, as I said, subject, has or have. And then lastly, the past participle. An example would be, he has called. He being the subject, then has, and we have has because it's he, right? And then lastly, we have the verb call, but the past participle would be called. He has called. Then we have another example that is, she has moved, right? Same thing, she subject, then has, and then root of the verb will be move, but we add the D, so it's moved. Next, we have negative. The negative is very similar to the affirmative, but we do change one thing, or more like we add one thing. So we have the subject, next we have to have, and then we add the word not. And lastly, the past participle. This makes she has not arrived. She being the subject, then has would be to have the auxiliary, and then we add not, and lastly, the verb, the root would be arrive, but we add the ed because it's the past participle, and so it is arrived. She has not arrived. Another example, he has not married. Then we have the question. For questions, we change it a little bit. What do? We mix things up, okay? So we first start with to have, right? Have or has. Then we follow that with the subject. And at the very last, very ending of the sentence, we add the verb. Okay, so it is to have plus subject plus the past participle of the verb. For example, have you studied, right? We see that here the have is at the beginning, the subject is in the middle, that is you, and at the very end is the past participle. This is how we ask questions. And then we can make negative questions, which would be the exact same thing that we just read. However, we add the word not. We add it right after the subject and before the past participle. That making to have plus subject plus not plus past participle. For example, have you not studied? That would be to have plus you is the subject plus the word not plus lastly study in the past participle form study. ¿Ok? Ahora que vimos todos los tipos de oraciones que se pueden crear con este tiempo verbal, vamos a ver un poquito más unos ejemplos con el mismo verbo en todos los tipos para que ustedes entiendan un poco mejor y quede más claro. So we have the verb sleep. For example, you can make you have not slept in affirmative. You have slept in affirmative. You have not slept in negative. Have you slept as a question? And have you not slept as a negative question? Then we have the verb walked or walk, which is the root. She has walked and she has not walked. This being the same, just adding the word not to make it negative. And then we have has she walked and has she not walked. These two are the same. We just add the word not to make it negative, right? Then we have visit. We have visited. We have not visited. Have we visited and have we not visited? And lastly, the word eat. He has eaten. He has not eaten. Has he eaten? And has he not eaten? Okay, so next thing. Let's see in what situations exactly we can use this tense. Ok, ya vimos al principio que se puede usar o que se usa para acciones que empezaron en el pasado y que tienen efecto en el presente o que siguen continuando, pero veamos más a fondo qué son este tipo de acciones exactamente, en qué específicos escenarios se pueden usar. First, we have unfinished actions, and this is used when an action was started in the past but hasn't been completed yet, meaning it's still happening in the present. For example, she has lived here since 2003. So she started living here ages ago, right? 2003. It's been how many years? Like 20, 21, right? And she started living here back then, and she still lives here, right? It hasn't stopped. She hasn't moved. She still lives here. Then we have she has known her since school. They started knowing each other since they were in the school. They're not in the school anymore, and they still know each other. And lastly, he has worked here for 3 years. He started working in this place 3 years ago. It's been 3 years and still works here. So these are actions that started in the past and are still going, right? They're still happening. Then we have finished actions. In this case, the action also started in the past. However, it has been finished. So this action is no longer ongoing and has ended. But we usually use this. It's very common when the action has very recently ended. Okay, we have examples. I have studied at that university before. So some time ago, I studied at that university, but now I'm not studying there anymore. Or Elena has finished her lunch. Elena started her lunch some time ago and she already ended, right? She already ate everything. Then we have, as I was saying, recently completed actions. This is very common when an action has very recently ended. So for this case, we usually use the word just after the verb to have. So it is subject, to have, just, and the past participle. For example, she has just finished lunch, right? She started lunch in the past, and she also finished in the past, but she just recently finished it. Jimmy has just left home, and you have just moved, okay? And, okay, now that we saw the type of situations that are more common with this tense, we're going to see something extra. So, es muy común que utilicemos este tiempo verbal con algo que llamamos adverbios, ¿verdad? Entonces, en esta parte vamos a ver más o menos cómo se utiliza, cómo se agrega, cuál es la forma correcta. The most common adverbs that we use, there's many adverbs, right? But these are the ones that are usually used with this tense. We have just, already, still, ever, never, and yet. We use adverbs to emphasize something in the sentences and to specify a little bit more. So the formula depends on the adverb that you're using, but they are all pretty similar. The only thing that changes is where does that adverb go in that sentence? Where do we put it? So for example, we have with just, already, and never, we add it this way. Subject, to have, the adverbs, any of these three, just, already, or never, and lastly, the past participle. The next type that we have is subject, to have, the word not, the past participle, and the word yet. It's important to say that yet is used in sentences in negative, right? So that's why we have to add the word not. And we add the adverb, in this case yet, at the very end of the sentence. And then lastly, we have subject, still, to have, not, past participle. This one also we usually use in negative. That's why we add the word not. Let's see some examples so that this is a lot more clear. I have just eaten, right? We're adding the word just. I have just eaten. We haven't finished yet. This is what I was saying, that it goes at the end and that it's usually negative. Have not finished yet. We have already played that game. This means that the game has already been, we have played it several times, right? And we add the word already to emphasize that. He still has not lost. And then lastly, she has never talked. Okay, now there's one more adverb that I mentioned here, if you can see, that is not in this. So we're gonna see this a little bit more than the other ones. We have this combination, and this helps us to say that something has happened at any time. What do I mean with this? I'm gonna show you with examples in a second, but let's see the formula first. And something very important with this is that we usually use it with questions. We use this to ask questions. And as we remember, right, the formula for the questions was to have, subject, and past participle. Now we have the word ever. So we add it in between the subject and the past participle. To have plus subject plus ever plus past participle. Some examples are, for example, have you ever worked at a pharmacy? This is asking if you have at any time in your life worked at a pharmacy. Has Julie ever called? Has he ever studied math? Have we ever bought that? Okay. Why do we use this? Or what is a good way to put this to use? It is to ask questions about someone else and their experiences. So if you're interested in knowing someone or in knowing things that have happened in this person's life, let's say that you are meeting a new person and you want to be friends with them, then you can use this tense to talk to them. For example, what can you ask this person? Have you ever taken French classes? Have you ever taken English classes? Have you ever taken Italian classes, right? Or we can say, have you ever visited this place? Maybe you want to know if someone has been to, I don't know, the United States, for example, California. So you say, have you ever visited California? Have you ever won the lottery? I wish some of you will have won the lottery, hopefully. Have you ever broken a bone? It is important that when answering these questions, We should never answer with ever. This is very important because it's easy to make the mistake. But we don't answer with ever. We answer with the word never in case that it's negative. If we answer in a positive way, then we just delete the adverb and we keep the sentence simple, how we saw at the very beginning, right? The very basic structure of the sentence. For example, so that it's a little more clear, have you ever visited this place? Right? We're asking a question and we're adding the word ever. But when we answer, we say, no, I have never visited this place. In case that it's negative, we take the word ever and we change it to never. But in case that you have visited that place, right, it's an affirmative sentence, you just take the word away. Yes, I have visited the place. You can see that in the sentence, neither never nor ever are present. We took it away. Another example, have you ever taken French classes? No, I have never taken French classes. Or yes, I have taken French classes. And that's all for today. Espero que les haya quedado un poquito más claro este tema y que con esos ejemplos tal vez resuelvan algunas de sus dudas. Muchas gracias por escuchar la clase de hoy y eso sería todo por ahora.